Okay.
Okay, Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Sure, this is for the October 3rd Board of Estimate and Taxation meeting.
Yeah.
Mayor Rilling? Mr. Abrams? Mr. Camacho?
Here.
Ms. Frere? Mr. Frere, I apologize. Mr. Jelleret?
Here.
Mr. Casimis?
Here.
We have 4. We have a quorum.
Okay, we have quorum. All right, so we have it seems like a lot to get through in the half an hour that I think we're gonna have a quorum. Tom, perhaps you can help clarify or what's contained on pages 6 through let's say 27. 25. Is that, or I guess number 27, 6 through 27. Is that all of the transfers that we're going to consider tonight?
Yes, that's it. That's it.
It seems like
Sorry, budget roll. Those are budget rollover requests, similar to transfers, but a different bird than regular transfers.
Right. It seems like a lot to take up in half an hour. I'm not sure that that's even feasible.
I think most of them are relatively straightforward. There may be a couple of questions, but
Okay.
none of them are. Well, there are only a handful that are over 100,000. Most of them are pretty straightforward. So I don't expect. Well, I don't know. I haven't been through this before. I don't know what to expect. But I'm looking at the roster here. It seems that we have representatives to cover any questions that may come up. So I think we should do our best.
Okay. So first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes. Is there a motion?
Motion.
All right. The motion is made by Artie. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes of the September 22, 2022 meeting? Are there any additions, amendments, deletions, anything of the sort? All right. All in favor of approving the minutes as contained in our packets, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, the motion carries, and the minutes of the September 22, 2022 meeting of the Board of Estimate and Taxation are approved. The next item on the agenda, there is nothing on the special appropriations agenda for today. There is nothing on the transfer agenda. The only item is section C, and that's the fiscal year 2022 balance surplus rollover requests. Mr. Ellis, would you mind sort of introducing that?
Sure. So as we have done historically in the October BET meeting, this is the time to request budget rollover requests from fiscal 22. So in instances where a division has an overall budget surplus, we give them some flexibility to request funds to be transferred for the current year. For instances like late purchase orders or invoices where they haven't been able to get the materials or the services because of shipping delays, COVID, supply chain shortages, those types of things. So it's an opportunity for the divisions to shift some money to the current fiscal year so that they can continue to move forward with their initiatives. I've got a summary page on the top here, or the first page. You can see down at the bottom that the total rollover request is $4.6 million. For some context, last year we requested, or the request was 5.6 million. Board of Ed is down about 500,000 collectively, and the city side is also down about 500,000 in the number of or the amount of the total requests. So my suggestion is we just move down the line here in order, one by one. The subsequent pages have details on the actual object codes, the account numbers, if you will, requesting from and to, and a brief explanation. And as I said earlier, it looks like from the roster that I see on my screen, that we have representatives from each area to address any concerns or issues that you may have.
Okay,
Can I just ask Tom to just go through and explain what we mean by the headings on some of the details that were, or actually the summary to begin with, where we've got the budget to actual and then the rollover request. The budget to actual is the actual underspending of the budget. Is that correct?
That's correct. So where there's a request, I've shown the actual department. So in that first section, you'll see it's the legislative that is making the
Right.
request. But the other departments within general government all came in collectively $78,000 under. So this is sort of the proof in the pudding, if you will, that division had an overall surplus and therefore can
Okay.
move forward with the request to roll
Right.
over some of those funds.
So in other words, the total city had underspent the budget by 12 million, but you also are looking at another 1.3 million that is, let's say, incurred but not yet, or it's incurred but it hasn't been paid yet.
Well, that's the majority of the examples are in that, yes.
Okay.
But as we go through it, you'll see there's a variety of different explanations for some of the underruns.
Let me just clarify, if I might. It's not incurred but not yet paid. What's happened is we have what I would call a favorable variance of 12.2 million,
Right.
which means, and that includes revenue for each department, which says we had a favorable variance where we spent less than the budget, put it that way.
Right.
Out of that 12.2, there's been a request to take 1.3 million. And if you think about it, the 12.2 would go into our fund balance. Take 1.3 off the top and give it to us to spend now in fiscal year 23. And that's our whole approach, which says we want to motivate managers. Sometimes it was just because of supply chain breakdown, where they would have spent it, but now they have to spend it in the next year. Sometimes it's an issue that maybe wasn't approved and we think it's okay to use it. So that hopefully that puts it in the right context.
Okay, so this isn't just, we haven't gotten the bill yet, but we've incurred the expense.
Correct, that it is not that.
Okay. Okay, I got it.
Okay, great.
But I think is there any way that we can quickly take a look or you could tell us that of the 12.2 million, how much of that was there revenue? There's a revenue component in that was more than what we anticipated.
I don't have it off the top of my head, but I do know, for example, that the debt service was over budgeted. We included in the debt service, and when we did the budget, the debt service for the WPCA and the parking authority. And it should have been only in their budgets because they budget revenue to offset. So we double counted. That was
Okay.
3.5 or 4 million. So there were some large items, and then there was some department by department, $1 million to $1.5 million, where they just spent less. There was a lot of ARPA money floating around. So I think it was just a healthy, good year plus good management. And please note, we didn't even use the 13 million from ARPA that was designated. That's beyond the 12 million. That went back into the ARPA fund. So we really had a very good year, like many local governments.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to point out, that I wanted to really understand that, because that just is a tribute to the financial management in each one of those departments, that they were able to, they know what they're faced with. They're not frivolously spending taxpayer money, and they're really keeping their eye on it. So I think that's very important to note.
Right, and I would just add, a lot of it is vacancies. So we might have vacancies in the beginning of the year, you budget for the whole year. And let's say you hire someone 6 months in, or when you hire someone, they came in at a lower salary. You add up those, like many other companies and governments, we have a staffing issue where it's harder to fill some of those vacancies.
Right, good job.
Since we have now 20 minutes or 19 minutes left. What I was going to propose was that since Henry, you've explained, and Tom, you've explained it pretty well what these numbers really are and what they're not, what they represent and what they don't. It seems to be almost slightly pro forma in terms of some of these rollover requests. So what I was going to suggest was that maybe we do it in reverse. We, if folks have any questions about items, about the particular items, perhaps we can address those first, and the ones that that we don't at least on the face of it have any concerns or questions about. We can address those last.
If you want, Ed, I
Yeah.
can do the 2-minute drill, the blitz.
Yeah,
go
that'd be
through
great.
the whole summary, and then we could take it up your approach and call
That's
on the department heads if we need to.
Yeah.
So general government, we decided to rewrite the charter. We hired an attorney, but it wasn't funded. What Tom did was, we had a surplus of 80,000. He said, let me take the 75,000 there, and that's for that attorney. Community services, the big one is the 170,000 consultant and summer youth employment program. Again, we had a $174,000 surplus. Everything else, we're giving up 204 out of 1.6 million. Lamont spends very cautiously and judiciously. So we had no problem with the issues that he was raising. Economic and community development, the big one was in TMP, consulting services and rescheduled projects. Out of an $80,000 surplus, they wanted about 29,000. The other two were very minor. And as you see, they also had 58,000 additional in economic and community development. In my area, we needed 18,000 mail services. I think we've been under budgeting, or the costs have been going up faster than we expected. So we got Sharon the 18,000 in IT out of a 180,000 surplus. Joyce wanted 37,000 for price increases. We hired a deputy budget director that was in the budget as a more junior person, like a budget analyst. But we met Agnes Kawai, who was outstanding. She worked in Stanford under Karen Vitale, who is now our deputy controller. She worked there for 10 years. We were able to grab her, and we're funding that position that was underfunded in the budget. And the other, in total, we had another 418,000 in surplus. In the police, again, they had a 1.6 million surplus. Their big item, extra security at the schools, which we need and everyone endorses, and we found the money for that. Fire department, 100,000 for overtime expense for COVID related. And again, they had a $143,000 surplus. They're spending or requesting 112. In public works, salt purchases, I think those are the on-call engineering services. So when we have an issue, we can call them as needed in an emergency basis. So they were looking for 268,000 out of 1.4 million. And then a multiple of miscellaneous items out of 581 total. 473 requested out of 2 million. Again, we go through their budgets very carefully because they're one of the larger budget areas, and we feel this was very judicious and reasonable. And that's how we did the city side. The Board of Ed with the revised numbers, they had a budget surplus of 3,274, which I believe, Linda, was a shade under 2%.
Yes, you're correct, Henry.
Okay, and according to Connecticut state law, if they have a surplus of 2%, they are allowed to request it, and I think we are required to give it. So that's the 3.274 million.
Henry, this is Troy, just quick on the Board of Ed. Is that how the 1.8 million was, we never dealt with that last year? Is that how that was absorbed? I see the comments that looks like for the new school.
Yes, if I may, Troy. Yes, so you recall that when we went through the FY23 budget process, there were a couple of items that were requested but we're not funded. And we had proposed using some of these rollover funds to fund that. The two big ticket items were the South Norwalk School with an operating budget of about 1.9 million. And then when the health insurance numbers came, you'll recall we had budgeted a smaller increase. And so we had anticipated that there would be some savings this year, plus savings last year that were rolled over that we hadn't used. And so our plan is to fund those two big ticket items with the carryover funds.
Okay,
I have a question about the community services. There's the $780,000 for library, and it appears that only 2,910 are being requested from that amount. What was that $980,000 for?
Tom, do you know the detail?
Are you asking why the budget underrun was
Yeah, it was
780?
so-
780,000, that was a favorable variance.
Yeah.
In the library. Do you have any breakdown on where that's coming?
Shortly.
I mean, it seems like a lot of
We
money
could
not
ask
spent.
Mon.
What?
What is the question? Sherelle's unable to make it, so I'll do my best to respond.
Yeah.
What's the question?
You have them on. So there's a 780,000, 500 or so, or I mean the 780,000 library amount that was funded, of which it seems like you're requesting 2,910. So that leaves close to $778,000 or $777,000 not spent of that amount. What was that amount for to begin with?
And Lamont, if I
Yeah,
can.
I don't have it, Tom. I'm actually in class. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
perfect. If you can interject, I have the detail.
Go
So
for it.
Ed, I'm looking at it. That is wages and salaries, both regular, meaning full-time, and the part-time. Each of those are over $250,000 underruns. So right there, we're looking at about 550.
Okay.
Those are the only ones that are over six figures. And again, this gets back to the staffing issue that we hear time and time again, and how difficult it is to hire.
Right,
Understood.
and we were still at, Ed, okay, it's coming back to me now, because Sherelle, over the past 2 years, we have not been at full operation at the library. We are planning to go for full-time, opening back on our Saturdays and Sunday schedule. We're looking forward to do that next month.
So we probably budgeted for the whole thing, but it was COVID. The hours weren't there, the people weren't there. That's why we had really such a good year.
Understood. Okay. All right. That makes sense.
Thank
All right,
you.
yeah, that was my only question about those, about any of the items, actually.
If I could jump in with one more thing real quickly.
Yeah.
Just so you have a full picture here. Henry and I did meet with the mayor and Leisha last week and presented this, and they were in agreement with us moving forward on it, just so you have the full picture.
Okay. Is there anything else?
I think it's something that we have to take a look at when we look at next year's budget, to recognize some of these favorable variances, and especially where we have shortfalls, that would make sure that everything is included in that. And then even when we have some of these over or under spending, there might be some savings that can be recognized, that if you go for a year or two and you consistently underspend your budget, it's telling me that maybe you don't need all those people if service has not suffered.
2 years ago, before 2 years ago, when we did the budget packages, we only looked at budget. We would look at the budget 2 years ago, 1 year ago, the current year projection, and then the future. And based on my experience, I said, where's actual? And what we changed, and Tom is working with Agnes right now as we prepare the pro forma packages for fiscal year 24, is we tend to look at actual from 2 years ago, actual from last year. For fiscal year 22, we'll have a projection based on the best numbers before the audit is finished. And Tom and Agnes look through those numbers line item by line item. My classic is we had someone who had a $50,000 line item for 3 years. And they said, why did you not give it to us this year? We said, because you didn't spend it in the prior years. They said, but I get it every year. So there was a mind change that we had to go through to explain to people, but people are very good. We've had peaks where 2 years ago they had a spike and then it came down and we gave them an average. They said, no, that was a one time. We're not going to need it going forward. You can give that back, but we do need it somewhere else. So the dialogue with the department heads is getting sharper and much more realistic. And obviously, we're going to use these budget surpluses and incorporate them as we go through the recommended budgets for fiscal '24.
Perfect.
It dawned on me that no one's moved this item. Can someone move it since we've had discussion
So
on it?
moved.
All right, Jim has moved it. It's also fair to say that because of this good management or whatever, because it was a good year in part, it's hard to say, but because of the tail end of COVID, that all this money then falls into our budget surplus right out into the rainy day fund. So that's not a bad result either.
Right. So what happens is, and again, you know, multitude of riches, I don't like to advertise it, but there was 13 million, or actually we changed it to 9 million of ARPA funds that we didn't use. So that went back into the ARPA buckets. And there's, the mayor had indicated that perhaps we use some of that ARPA money to offset the tax increases in this next year's budget. Leisha's talking about other programs, because if we don't spend it, we might lose it. So we want to make sure we utilize it well. But the point is, you're absolutely right. That 12.2 adds, if it survives the audit, adds to our budget, our rainy day fund. Or let's look at the whole thing, 15.5 minus the 4.6 million. So we're looking at an increase of the rainy day fund of 11 million. So what I have proposed is we're looking at very tight budget increases for this coming year because we're facing headwinds. There are some uncontrollable or less controllable items, which are health insurance, pension contribution, OPEB contribution, and debt service. We're targeting for every department to try to come in 2.5 to 3.5% increase. Now, given that the salary increases by union contract is 2.35, that's very tight. But I think these less controllable may come in as high as 7 to 12%. So what I proposed to the mayor is we could use some of that ARPA money, but also a drawdown of the rainy day fund to offset the tax rate increase. So the departments are running as lean and mean as we can. We're going to control those fixed expenses as best we can, but offset them using some of those reserves, because I think this might be as tough as COVID. So that's our plan going out, and then we go through the process, and you'll be obviously privy to all the details.
Okay. Are there any other questions concerning
I'd just like to point out that, I mean, it's all well and good that this drops into the rainy day fund. That's certainly better than it just going away someplace. But on the other hand, this is money that we've collected from the taxpayers. And what it's telling me is that we've collected more than we really needed from the taxpayers. And so we are going to apply that. And I think that your rationale, Henry, is excellent, that we're going to use that to take care of some of the issues that we know are probably going to come up, or we don't know to what extent they're going to come up next year. So I think it's clear that it's a it maybe not so much of a coincidence, but I think it's luck that we have this surplus that we're going to be able to earmark and use in the event of some difficulties that could be coming up in the future. But I don't like it as a good practice to always build in that extra. We've always talked about this. You don't want to put a lot of fluff in those budgets. You want to do it as close as possible to what the actual is going to be, and that's saving the taxpayers money.
But as far as I know, the fund balance is funded largely from this type of thing, right? From a surpluses year to year. Is that what?
Yes,
is
that's what,
largely funds the fund balance?
that's where it comes from.
Yeah.
In
So
essence, the surplus from the income statement, from our operations, goes onto the balance sheet as
Yeah.
part of our unallocated and undesignated reserve known as the rainy day fund. But going back to James's point, in my 3 years here doing budgets, we've squeezed out a lot of the fluff that used to be there. You know, people with low ball revenue and high ball expenses. And I think, you know, again, we have a 80-20 rule or a 90-10. We know who our customers are, and we muscle them to force them to explain why they need so much money for what they're doing. So I think we're getting better and better, and the surpluses are based on either good management or last year, we had COVID money, we had ARPA money coming in, and we had a lot of vacancies. So that gave us the surplus. We're looking going forward. There's not going to be any more ARPA money or COVID money, and it's going to be tighter times. So I absolutely volunteered moment one. Most CFOs don't volunteer this ever, that we should use some of that rainy day fund to offset the tax increase, because we feel our taxpayers are going to have a tough year and we want to try to plan for it. So we hope for the best, we budget for the worst, and try to get it better every year.
Thank you. We have 3 minutes before we lose our quorum. So is there any other, are there any other questions, any other discussion concerning this item? What I propose is that we just sort of consider the request in total as opposed to individually. That's okay, since there appear to be no issues with respect to any individual department requests. If that's okay, I'll ask for a vote. All in favor of the transfer request as set forth or summarized on page 6 of 78 of our packet, signify by saying aye.
Well, it's a budget rollover request. I think we want.
The budget
Technically.
rollover request summary, set forth on page 6.
Okay. Aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? All right, the motion carries, and the rollover requests on as summarized on page 6 are all approved. So I don't think we need the department heads here at this point. I think
Great.
we're all set.
Thank you very much, and thank you for all the department heads that joined.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
everybody.
Mr. Chairman and the committee. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Yep, thank you.
Mhm.
Have a good night.
You do.
Thank you too.
Bye.
Ed, there's no more votes, right?
No more votes. So we're just
For votes, yeah.
to the
Okay, I gotta skip out.
Okay, thank you, Artie, for sticking around.
Thank you. All right, thanks. Bye.
All right, so the next, I guess the other portion of it, of the agenda of the financial reports. And I think the Oak Hills report was the August 2022 report, which I believe we had in our last packet. And there's no one here from Oak Hills, as I understand it. Apparently, Joe Androsco is not receiving invites, and he's usually the one that summarizes this stuff pretty well. The person that did receive the invite is not available, as I understand it, and the other 2 members of the board are had other plans. So, unless there are any questions about that, I think the statement that was provided in our packet sort of speaks for itself. I think we reviewed it last time. Is there anything else that we'd like to go over? The year-to-date capital budget report and operating expense report. Henry, is that something that you want to go over? Or?
I thought.
Sorry, go ahead, Henry.
Maybe, no?
Are there any questions about those items? I didn't really look at them, but if there's a summary that we can, that you guys are prepared to give us, that's fine. If not, I think there's really not much that we need to discuss at this meeting.
Can we get copies of the audit report?
We got, I think we got capital budget expenditure for September 2022, the
I'm
operating.
talking about the audit report that was done
Oh.
for the the authority, or does Henry get that? Henry, do you get that?
Which is this for the Oak Hills?
Oak Hills?
Yeah, we got the August 22 financial thing.
No, the audit report that was done.
Oh, I didn't know there was one done.
I haven't gotten it.
Yeah.
You,
I mean, I don't know whether it was given, whether they circulated or not. I don't know how that works.
Well, do they have a June 30 year end?
I believe so, yeah.
If they have a June 30 year end, the audit report may not be finished yet. We have a June 30 and we don't get it out until usually December. I would think Oak Hills can do it faster, but it may not be ready, but we should ask them, Tom, for the next.
yeah, I got you.
I would also add, it gets me in trouble, but I'm gonna add it. Now that we have a full complement in the budget department with Tom and Agnes, we are looking at circulating budget versus actual reports to the departments every quarter. We're gonna start with every quarter. Maybe one day we'll get to the promised land of every month. And we're hoping to do this in late October. So we'll have the first quarter of fiscal 23, which is July through September of 22. We'll have budget, we'll have actual, and any material variance, positive or negative, they have to explain. It'll go to every department head, it'll go to every chief. And this way, Tom and Agnes could be on top of variances much faster and focus on the real issues. And if we do that quarter by quarter for the first 3 quarters, and maybe we do it monthly for the end of the year, to me, it's like landing the lunar module. You get closer and closer, you find out which is the timing difference, what's a real substantive issue, how are you going to fix it if you're spending more than you should? Do you need a special appropriation and why? And I think it just gives us a better handle on what's actually going on. So we're looking at circulating that, let's say the 3rd week of October, call it the 21st, the 25th. And at the same time, we're hoping to circulate the pro forma budget packages for fiscal year 24. So it ties it in a nice circle that said, here's your pro forma. What I said before, 2 years of actual, 1 year projection, here are the numbers, and we're going to give you some guidance on what we think some of those numbers should be. And then you come back and request. But at the same time, here's how we're going to monitor you during the year, budget versus actual. Take a look. And this forces the department heads and the chiefs to get to know their numbers better, what's really going on operationally, and that they can stay on top of the things. So we don't just wait till the 4th quarter and say, oops, we have a problem.
And it also, in some ways, encourage department heads to spend their money that they perhaps were not.
No, we never want to
would hope
spend
not.
money if they don't want to spend it.
Yeah.
I don't think, it doesn't burn a hole in my pocket.
Right.
If anything, I go with James's approach, which says, oh, doesn't look like you really need that. Okay.
Yeah,
we'll
But I'm saying
remove
just to
that one.
keep on top of them like that might actually make them realize, oh, I'm not spending this bucket over here. Maybe I should, that kind of thing.
Well,
But I don't think that's what we want to convey to them, that,
No,
you've got
I
this
know
money
that's
and
not
you're
what
running
we
out of time. It doesn't go bad. I mean, the whole
I know
idea
that
of
we
this
want-
is that you spend only what you need.
I know that we don't want to convey that to them. I'm just saying that unwittingly, that you might alert them. I'm not saying it's not a bad idea to do this anyway, but you might alert department heads that they're not spending this bucket over here, and maybe they should, because what's it doing there?
right. And I'll tell you what we have found, where maybe they thought they could just spend it later in the year, then there were supply chain issues. So if they have a positive variance very early, it should be what's going on. Did you not spend it? Did you change your specs? Are you having problems with suppliers? The key is the numbers are an indicator to get us underneath the numbers to find out what's really going on operationally. And I think it's just a healthy phenomenon. And now that we have the staff, we could have the line people do the research, tell us what's going on, and we become more knowledgeable, which can only inform us and help us as we do the budget for the next year.
I think it's really important that when you're doing the budget, that you understand the operations of that particular department. You can't, if you don't, if you and Tom don't have a good handle on what the operations are all about, whether they've got good internal controls, whether they got smooth running operations, then it's a waste of time to even give them the money that they're asking for.
Well, we try to do better year by year. And I think with Agnes on the team, it gives us the resources to push and probe and to do more analytical work rather just compiling numbers and printing reports. And that's the next level that we're trying to introduce. So now Tom's target is public, and we're going to have to meet that in late October. But I think it's really going to be a very healthy tool. And again, the better the department heads and the chiefs are about their operations and knowledgeable about those variances, then the better the whole place will run.
Amen, brother.
Anything else?
We have Lisa B on to discuss tax collection in the narrative if if you guys are up for it.
There she is.
Hi, can
Hi,
you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I won't take too much of your time, but I bring you glad tidings of positive tax collections for the end of the prior fiscal year. So maybe I can end your evening on a happy note, because I'm actually looking back to our end of August numbers. We haven't provided our numbers for the end of September. We had a tough time closing out the month. Our debit machines weren't working. And last Friday was a tough day. So we don't have September numbers for you, but I do have August numbers for you. And with regard to, I'll do current collections first and then prior. As of the end of August, we were at 52.82% of the current levy, which was really right where we needed to be. But in terms of the prior year, with the 60-day collections added in, on the immediately prior grand list year, we were at 99.51% of our levy, which we thought was excellent. I will say that part of that was because the levy was reduced due to court stipulated judgments with assessment appeals. So the levy did go down significantly. And by significantly, I mean more than $5 million. That was money that we had to credit back to people who had already paid it. But the numbers are the numbers, and the collection rate is what it is. We're going with our net collectible levy, and we hit 99.51%. We were at 99.3 as of the end of July, and August bumped it up a wee bit more. So that's really useful information for the CFO and his team when he's doing his bond presentations and things like that. And we wanted to share the good news with you. The collection period went well. We are still shorthanded in my division. We're short 2 people. So we're operating with a staff of 6 rather than 8, but I'm working on that. But all things considered, things are going relatively well, and we're actually looking ahead to when we're going to be doing our second installment billing next month. So I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
I don't know, it's every time I listen to you, I can't imagine how you pull this off all the time. It's like a miracle.
It's magic.
It's got to be magic.
It's hard work is what it is. It's hard work.
You're doing a great job.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
At least it is concerning that you're seeing more of those fraud checks, that people are stealing the checks that are made out to you, and you know, I guess they're getting them out of the mailboxes, or
Yeah. What's happening, we're coming across a little bit more of it now too, because we sent delinquent notices in September. So a few more surfaced, but in particular, the Darien post office was hit, and the town of Darien tax collector and us. The taxpayers are seeing their checks that they put in the mail to us stolen from the mail stream, negotiated by a fraudster, because people are now able to cash checks remotely with their phone. And we're finding these checks were altered. The payee was changed, the dollar amount was changed. And in some cases, for example, a check for $400, $500 will be negotiated for $8,000 if the person had the money in their account, boom. And the taxpayer is hit. It's terrible. And we're telling people who call and say, what should I do? You know, we rely on paying by mail for a lot of our bills. I just tell them, be vigilant about your bank statement and ensure that those checks are clearing. Or if failing that, if you want to use the electronic check, the EFT payment, they can go to our website. It's only $1.25 extra. That's how I pay my bills now, is with the electronic check to ensure that it gets there. But you know, we have to have some responsibility too over our own funds. So people need to check their bank accounts and check their bank statements and ensure that their checks are being cashed by the proper payee, right?
Yeah, but
Were the
it's too
checks
late.
in-
It's too late anyway when they see it, so.
Were the checks in Darien stolen out of the outside boxes?
Yes.
Or
Yeah,
not from people's personal mailboxes
well, both, but
outside their house?
they were saying from outside the Darien post office, people thought it was pretty safe by going directly to the post office to mail, and even that isn't safe. But definitely putting mail in your own individual mailbox in front of your residence and putting the flag up is a very bad idea at this point.
Lisa,
Not recommended.
the box that we have here at City Hall outside, that's one of the newer, I wouldn't say steel proof, but more difficult to steal from, right? The way
It is.
it's very
Mhm.
small to slip in, and it sort of like grabs it and pulls it in, which means you
Right.
can't get your hand or a hook down there, right?
That's exactly correct. That's what
Okay.
they're doing. They're replacing the boxes with a box with a very, very minuscule slit in it. And it's very hard to put something in there and fish something out. But what they do is they put a sticky substance on basically like a fish hook. And they get it in there, and whatever it pulls out, it pulls out. That's what they're doing. So there is still a chance that they could do it, but you're also right in front of City Hall, which is a very visible location. So the likelihood that people would do it is probably less. I haven't heard of anybody mailing it there and having it stolen. And I do use that mailbox myself as well.
So do I.
It's funny, the one in Norwalk, the one on Connecticut Avenue near Stu Leonard's, the one you could drive and deposit your mail, the drive-through has one of those open slots still, which is really weird because it's
Wow.
right in front of the mail plate, the little post office there. So, and you could see when there's a lot of mail in there, when I mail something, you could see sometimes the mail is literally just sitting right there. Somebody can put
Yes.
their hand in. So I'm shocked that one does not have that small slot yet.
And we should emphasize, for people who are concerned about that, they could always come in physically to the tax collector office. And we have, what is at least about 10 branches around the city where you could go to a bank branch and get credit for your payment. So we could do electronically or by phone. We could do it in person at Lisa's office or at the branches. So people are not forced to do the mail. All we could do is give options and warn people. And hopefully they get reimbursed from their banks and wherever if they get defrauded.
That's correct.
And credit cards, Lisa, you don't accept, or you can?
We do. We accept credit cards, debit cards,
There's a fee, a convenience fee, right?
ATM cards. There is a fee if you're paying in person. With a debit card, we absorb the fee. It's 10 cents an item, so we absorb it. But if you're paying with a debit card online, there is a fee, a convenience fee, because we don't have the security that they do. So again, as the CFO indicated, it's an option. So if an individual does want to pay with that method, they are going to have to pay the fee. And it's the same if you're paying your state income tax or your federal income tax, we have to pay a fee with that as well. We pass that on to the customer.
Righty.
But I
Right.
mean, part of why the collection rate is so high is we do so much enforcement. So I have to reiterate my gratitude to the policymakers and individuals such as yourselves, that when you get the complaints from the customers that I couldn't get a building permit. I couldn't get my health permit. I couldn't register my car because the tax collector wanted me to pay my bill. It's all those little transactions, hundreds of transactions over the course of 12 months that contribute toward that rate. And because we don't make exceptions for people and we do charge interest when people are late, that's why that rate is so high. So I'm grateful to everybody who contributes to it behind the scenes. The mayor, the council, folks such as yourselves, our state legislators get these phone calls from people all the time, and we do get the backing. So that's part of it as well. And I'm grateful.
But you've trained them. You've trained the taxpayers very well.
It took a long time, didn't it?
All right, well, thank you for that, Lisa.
Thanks.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Is there any other matter to discuss? Okay, hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Well, all in favor?
If
I'm
we
just
don't have a
teasing.
quorum to adjourn, do we have?
We don't
Yeah,
have a
we have
quorum,
no
that's
quorum.
true.
We can't adjourn.
That's true. So we're gonna have to be on here until next month.
The mayor should be done with his town hall around 11.
Huh.
All right,
Maybe.
well,
Maybe.
let's break out a bottle of wine and just chat some more.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, guys.
All right, good night.
Thanks a lot.
Next
Thank you.
week.
Take care.
Good night.